25 years, a quarter of a century, long enough to raise your children from newborns into adults, long enough to buy a home, build a career, pay off a mortgage, start a business, make lifelong friends, become part of a community, and plant roots so deep that this country stops feeling like your adopted home and simply becomes your home. And then one day, without any warning that could have possibly prepared you for the blow, an official envelope arrives. Inside that envelope is a notice from the United States government, and the words on that page are going to shatter everything you believed about the life you built. The government is taking away your citizenship. After 25 years, they are erasing it, canceling it, as if it never existed. If that sounds impossible to you, if that sounds like something that could never actually happen in America, I need you to stay with me until the very last second of this video. Because what I am about to share with you today is not a rumor, not a hypothetical, not a worst-case scenario invented to frighten you. This is real. This happened. And the legal principles behind it could affect you, your parents, your spouse, your siblings, or someone else you love right now. Welcome to USA Visa Policy, the channel that exists for one reason and one reason only: to make sure that you and your family have access to the most accurate, the most current, and the most critically important information about United States immigration, visas, green cards, citizenship, and every policy change and legal development that could affect your future in this country. We understand what is at stake for you. We understand that for most immigrant families, the journey to American citizenship is not just a legal process. It is the defining achievement of a lifetime. It is the culmination of years of sacrifice, hard work, patience, uncertainty, and hope. And that is precisely why the story we are covering today matters so deeply and so urgently. Because what this family experienced is not just their story. It is a warning. It is a wake-up call. And it is a lesson that every single naturalized citizen and every family currently navigating the immigration process in America cannot afford to ignore. So let's get into it, and let's talk about everything. What happened to this family, why it happened, how the legal process works, what it means for you, and what you need to do right now to protect yourself and the people you love. Let's begin at the beginning, because the full weight of this story only hits you when you understand the complete picture of who this family was and what they had built over the course of their lives in America. This was not a family living on the margins. This was not a family with a troubled history, a criminal record, or a pattern of law-breaking that might have made the government's decision feel understandable or predictable to anyone paying attention. Quite the opposite. By every measure that matters in American society, this family was a success story. They had arrived in the United States as immigrants, as so many millions of families before them had arrived, carrying dreams, carrying determination, and carrying the willingness to work as hard as necessary to turn those dreams into something real and lasting. Over the course of 25 years, they did exactly that. They worked, they built, they contributed. They paid federal taxes, state taxes, and property taxes every single year without exception. They raised their children on American soil, enrolled them in American public schools, watched them grow up speaking English as naturally as breathing, making American friends, participating in American sports and activities, and developing the kind of deep, instinctive sense of belonging to this country that only comes from growing up here. They participated in their local community. They were involved in their neighborhood, their church, their children's schools. They voted in elections after becoming citizens. They did everything, and I mean genuinely everything, that a model citizen is supposed to do. And they did all of it consistently, honestly, and without interruption for a full 25 years. And then came the envelope. The notice inside informed them that the United States government had initiated a legal process against them, a process most Americans have never heard of, a process most naturalized citizens don't even know exists, a process with a name that carries a weight you can feel the moment you learn what it means. That process is called denaturalization. And understanding what it is, how it works, and why it exists is absolutely essential for every immigrant family in America today. Denaturalization is the formal, official, legal mechanism through which the United States government can revoke, cancel, and permanently remove a person's naturalized citizenship. It is not something that happens arbitrarily or carelessly. It requires the government to file a civil lawsuit in federal court and to prove its case by what the law calls clear and convincing evidence, which is a deliberately high standard of proof, higher than what is required in most ordinary civil cases because the consequences of losing citizenship are so severe and so irreversible. But make no mistake, this process is real, it is active, and it has been used by multiple administrations across both political parties for many decades. The United States Department of Justice maintains a dedicated unit, a team of attorneys, investigators, and analysts whose entire function is to identify, investigate, and prosecute denaturalization cases. This unit has access to immigration records stretching back decades. And in recent years, that unit has received dramatically increased funding, staffing, and technological resources, including advanced data matching tools and artificial intelligence systems capable of cross-referencing immigration documents from the distant past with current databases in ways that were simply not possible before. So, what exactly did the government find when it went back through 25 years of records related to this family? Federal investigators determined that during the original citizenship application process, certain critical pieces of information had either been deliberately withheld from immigration authorities or had been presented in a way that was materially misleading, meaning that if the true information had been disclosed at the time of the application, the outcome of that application might have been different. The government's legal position was clear, firm, and legally unassailable. It does not matter what happened after the application. It does not matter how honestly and how well you lived in the years that followed. Citizenship that was built on a dishonest foundation cannot be permitted to stand, and the government has both the legal authority and the institutional will to dismantle it, no matter how much time has passed. And this brings us to the single most important legal fact in this entire story, the fact that I need you to stop everything and truly absorb, because it is the fact that changes everything about how you should think about your immigration history and your current status. When it comes to citizenship fraud in the United States, there is no statute of limitations. None. Zero. This is not an oversight. It is not a gap in the law that nobody got around to filling. It is a deliberate, explicit, and intentional decision made by the United States Congress. In most areas of American law, statutes of limitations exist for very good reasons. They protect people from being prosecuted indefinitely for past actions. They recognize that evidence degrades over time and becomes harder to evaluate fairly. They provide a sense of finality and certainty that allows people to move forward with their lives. But Congress made a conscious choice to exclude citizenship fraud from this protection entirely. When it comes to denaturalization, the clock never starts, it never runs, and it never expires. What this means in practical terms is this. It does not matter if 5 years have passed since you received your citizenship. It does not matter if 15 years have passed. It does not matter if 25 years have passed, as it did for this family. It does not matter if 40 years have passed or 50 or more. If the United States government discovers credible evidence at any point in time that your citizenship was obtained through fraud or deliberate misrepresentation, they retain the full legal authority and the institutional capacity to come after you, regardless of how long ago it happened, regardless of how thoroughly you have integrated into American life, and regardless of how exemplary your conduct has been in every year since. The government's position in this case was blunt and legally coherent. What happened on that original application defines the legitimacy of everything that came after it. And if what happened on that application was fraudulent, then nothing that came after it changes that fundamental fact. The family fought back with everything they had. They hired experienced immigration attorneys who specialized specifically in denaturalization defense, one of the most complex and demanding subspecialties within immigration law. They gathered character witnesses from every corner of their life in America, from their neighbors, their coworkers, their children's teachers and coaches, their religious community, their local business associations. They compiled evidence of their contributions to American society spanning a full quarter century. They made powerful and emotionally compelling arguments that stripping citizenship from people who had lived honestly and productively for 25 years was not just disproportionately harsh, It was fundamentally contrary to everything America claims to stand for as a nation built by and for immigrants. Their case attracted enormous attention. Immigration attorneys across the country began monitoring it closely because of its potential to set legal precedents. Civil rights organizations and immigrant advocacy groups weighed in publicly, arguing that the government's action in this case crossed a moral and ethical line, even if it did not cross a legal one. Several members of the United States Congress made public statements questioning whether the enforcement action was appropriate given the family's history. Major national newspapers covered the story. The public conversation it sparked was loud, it was heated, and it was deeply important. But one of the most emotionally devastating dimensions of this story, one that illustrates with brutal clarity just how complicated and cruel the consequences of denaturalization can be, is what it means for the children in a family when a parent's citizenship is revoked. Some children in this family were born on American soil. For those children, citizenship is an absolute constitutional right guaranteed by the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which states unambiguously that all persons born on United States territory are citizens of the United States. The government cannot revoke that citizenship under any circumstances because it was not derived from the parent's naturalization process. It came from the fundamental fact of birth on American soil. Those children are safe. But for other family members who went through the naturalization process themselves, who derived their citizenship status through the family's original application, the situation is dramatically more complicated and dramatically more frightening. The specter of deportation began to materialize over their lives. And I want you to sit with that reality for a moment, because the human cost of what that means is almost impossible to overstate. Imagine living in a country for 25 years. Imagine that every meaningful relationship in your life exists here. Imagine that the country you originally came from has changed so much in the decades you have been gone that it is essentially a foreign place to you now. The language might have evolved, the culture has moved on, the people you once knew have scattered or died or moved away. You have no professional network there, no community there, no support system there. Everything that gives your daily life structure and meaning, your home, your friendships, your children, your grandchildren, your career, your faith community, everything is here in America. And now the government is telling you that you may be forced to leave and return to a country that feels less like home than the country that is expelling you. That is not a legal consequence. That is the obliteration of a human life as it has been lived and loved. The procedural reality of denaturalization is itself worth understanding in detail, because many people assume, incorrectly, that the government can simply issue a letter and take citizenship away the way you might cancel a subscription. That is not how it works. The government must initiate a formal civil lawsuit in a federal district court. It must assign attorneys to the case, build a file, gather evidence, and then prove that evidence meets the clear and convincing standard before a federal judge. The person facing denaturalization has full constitutional rights throughout this process, including the right to legal representation and the right to mount a complete defense. But here is the reality that immigration attorneys will tell you openly and honestly. The power imbalance in these proceedings is staggering. On one side, you have an individual immigrant family, often with limited financial resources, facing what can become a multi-year legal battle that generates enormous legal fees. On the other side, you have the full institutional weight of the United States Department of Justice, with its experienced federal attorneys, its access to decades of government records, its investigators, its expert witnesses, and its essentially unlimited legal budget. Very few families have the financial resources to sustain an effective defense over that kind of prolonged legal battle, and the emotional, psychological, and social toll of living under the shadow of denaturalization proceedings while trying to maintain some semblance of normal life is something that no statistic or legal analysis can adequately capture. Immigration attorneys across the country responded to this case with immediate and urgent action. Legal professionals specializing in citizenship law began reaching out to their clients and to the broader immigrant community with a consistent and clear message. Go back and review your original immigration and citizenship applications right now, every single one of them. regardless of how long ago you filed them, regardless of how certain you feel that everything was accurate. Look at every form, every answer, every document you submitted during your entire immigration journey from your very first visa application forward. Why? Because errors in immigration documents, even errors that were completely unintentional, even errors that seem trivial or insignificant, can potentially be used as the basis for denaturalization proceedings if the government decides to investigate. And the critical distinction that every naturalized citizen needs to understand is this: there is an enormous legal difference between proactively identifying and properly addressing a past error with the assistance of an experienced immigration attorney versus having the government discover that error through its own investigation. When you proactively address an error, your legal options are broader. Your negotiating position is stronger, and the range of possible outcomes includes ones that protect your citizenship. When the government discovers the error on its own, your options narrow dramatically, the consequences become substantially more severe, and the path to any positive resolution becomes exponentially more difficult to navigate. The broader political and administrative environment in the United States has made unmistakably clear that denaturalization is not going away as an enforcement tool. Multiple administrations, representing both major political parties, have maintained and in many cases significantly expanded the government's capacity and willingness to pursue these cases. Government officials have made repeated public statements emphasizing that American citizenship is one of the most precious and valuable legal statuses in the world, and that it must be rigorously protected from those who obtained it through dishonest means. They have stated plainly that no case is too old to investigate, and no case is too complex to pursue if the evidence of fraud is sufficiently strong and credible. For the immigrant community living in America today, this case has created a climate of anxiety that community organizations and legal service providers are feeling on the ground every single day. Organizations that serve immigrant populations have reported dramatic and sustained increases in people reaching out with urgent questions about their immigration histories, their old application documents, and whether anything from their past might expose them to government scrutiny. People who filed their green card applications or naturalization applications years or even decades ago are trying to reconstruct from memory every detail of those old filings, asking themselves with genuine fear whether every answer they gave was complete and fully accurate. There is also a serious and necessary conversation happening among legal scholars, policy experts, and immigration advocates about whether the current legal framework around denaturalization strikes the right balance. Critics of aggressive enforcement argue that someone who has spent 25 years living honestly, raising good children, paying taxes, and contributing meaningfully to their community has proven through the daily evidence of their actions and choices that they belong in America and deserve to remain here regardless of what may have happened on a government form filed a quarter century ago. Supporters of strict enforcement counter that the rules and laws governing naturalization must mean something, that the integrity of the citizenship process is foundational to the integrity of American citizenship itself, and that allowing fraud to stand simply because enough time has passed sends a deeply dangerous message to the millions of people who went through the process with complete honesty. Both arguments carry weight. Both arguments reflect genuine values that Americans hold. But what this case makes absolutely clear, beyond any reasonable debate, is that every single step of the immigration and citizenship process in the United States carries consequences that are real, serious, and permanent. Every form you fill out, every box you check, every question you answer during your entire immigration journey carries weight that you cannot afford to underestimate. It does not matter how long ago you filed those documents. The information you provided on your initial visa application, your green card application, your citizenship application, and every other immigration filing you have ever submitted can have consequences that follow you not just for years, but for the rest of your life. If you are currently anywhere in the immigration process, let this family story be the most powerful and sobering reminder you will ever receive about the absolute necessity of complete honesty in everything you submit to the United States government. Disclose everything fully and accurately. If you are unsure how to answer any question on any immigration form, do not guess, do not assume, and do not leave it blank hoping for the best. Consult with a qualified, experienced immigration attorney before you submit anything. The investment you make in proper legal guidance at every stage of your immigration journey is worth infinitely more than the devastating cost of facing government scrutiny years or decades down the road. This family's story is a tragedy on multiple levels at once. It is a tragedy of broken trust between a family and the country they called home for a quarter of a century. It is a tragedy that exposes with brutal clarity just how fragile the immigrant dream can be, even after decades of honest, productive, and law-abiding life. And it is ultimately a story that, as painful as it is, carries within it an invaluable and urgent lesson for every immigrant family living in America today. Your immigration history matters. Every document matters. Every answer matters. And the time to make sure everything is right is not after the government comes knocking. It is right now. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for watching today's video here on USA Visa Policy. This is exactly the kind of story this channel was created to cover, because we believe without reservation that every immigrant family in America deserves access to information that can protect them, inform them, and help them navigate the complex world of American immigration with confidence, clarity, and the peace of mind that comes from truly knowing where you stand. If this video gave you information that matters to you, please take a moment to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment below sharing your thoughts or your own experience, and most importantly, share this video with every immigrant family in your life who needs to hear this message today. Stay informed, stay honest, stay protected, and we will see you in the very next video right here on USA Visa Policy.